In our small chapel, there is a clock, and it's a classic looking clock, and it's enormous. In place of the numbers are Hebrew letters, and you can tell it was made for us because it's not Aleph for one, Bet for two, etc., but other Hebrew letters in a pattern that's not obvious at all. We used to look at it on a regular basis on weekday evenings before Minyan with puzzlement and try to figure out what the secret code was around the hours of the clock. A verse from the Bible, maybe, but no. In the middle, in Hebrew, is spelled out phonetically the name Sharp. And briefly, we thought Sharp is the name of a company that makes watches. But actually, no, just digital watches. The answer to that part of the riddle we got quickly because Sharp is the name of one of the early families of Beth Abraham. Eventually, I realized that the other part of the secret was in plain sight the whole time. Elsewhere in the chapel is the name of Zelia Sharp, Zichrono Livracha, and her Hebrew name is around the hours of the clock, Zisela. It's one of my favorite Yiddish words. Zis means sweet. Sweet and sharp, names on a beautiful Jewish classic clock. The clock has an inside too, and I want to connect the names on our clock and the gears inside the clock to the telling of time that begins for Jews on this particular Shabbat and sweeps all the way through the fall holy days, through the new year, all the way to Simchat Torah. We tell time for the next 2.5 months with a clock that is as exquisite and carefully engineered as the one in our chapel. Inside this Jewish clock that I'm talking about are 3 gears. The biggest gear is the Torah, in particular the book of Devarim, Deuteronomy. The second gear is the book of the prophet Yeshayahu, Isaiah, whose first words give us the name for today, Shabbat Chazon, the Shabbat of vision. The other gear is the calendar, which moves from Tisha B'Av this Monday evening, commemorating the destruction of the temples in Jerusalem, through Sukkot, the festival of building homes. Clocks have more than one gear, and the operation is kind of paradoxical. The gears indicate time going forward, even though they are just moving in circles. And even though the gears move at different speeds, and at any time, 2 gears are rotating in the opposite direction of one another. How do these 3 gears work? The Torah, the prophet, the calendar. How does this exquisite clock bring us from now into the new Jewish year, the new year for our lives? The Torah gear at this time of year is the book of Devarim, Deuteronomy. It is Moshe's final set of speeches as the people are so close to entering the promised land. Starting with next week's reading, the book is relentless. The man is nonstop. Moshe is not going with them, so he uses every moment he has left to reteach them everything, to repeat the mitzvot, to remind them what it felt like to experience miracles, and to appeal to their minds. Sefer Devarim, the book of Deuteronomy, is about forging ahead, not stopping anymore on the way forward to a land that will become finally not a promise, but an actual home. Devarim is mostly Moshe's first-person voice, unlike anything else in the Torah. He is urgent and insistent. He is done with excuses. He tells the people again about their stumbles and stucknesses, the ones in the desert and the ones that will come in the future. And Moshe says, nonetheless, it is forward from here. That's how most of this gear moves, in the direction of you will not stop here. You will get this. And yet even that gear turns the other way as it rounds. This week in the Torah and Deuteronomy, Moshe is not that complex. He recounts how the people got to where they are as an uncomplicated story of moving forward smoothly as a powerful people. And Moshe in Deuteronomy uses the word love more than any other part of the Torah does. Divine love for us, divine love for our ancestors, love without conditions, love to more and more people, our potential to love the divine. Even the book itself is an inspiring example of transformation, of self-transcendence. Moshe began as the one who said at the burning bush he was bad at speaking, and now he is speaking. And by the end of the book, when he has said everything he can in a speech or a lesson, Moshe will just sing, sharp and sweet. From here to the new year, we need Moshe's urging that there is no place to go but ahead, that there are guidelines we need to be rooted in, that we are more than our flaws and our failures, that there is a life we haven't yet lived, and it waits for us. It is our home. That is the gear of the Torah. As the big gear of the Torah turns, moving past it, sort of the other way, are the words of the prophet Yeshayahu, Isaiah. Starting next week, the prophetic words of the Haftarot are words of consoling to a wounded people. Sometimes the prophet speaks his own words. Sometimes the prophet channels the divine, speaking to the people directly, again in the first person, almost like at Mount Sinai. The people the prophet is speaking to are about to return from 2 generations of exile in Babylonia, far from home, but they don't necessarily believe they'll make it there. The voice that speaks to them knows that they are wounded and they have felt abandoned. They are ashamed of the wrongs that ate away at their souls and their society, that led to their exile. But Yeshayahu's message is about hope and self-worth. You are worthy of redemption. There is a divine who is more powerful than your doubts about yourself and your return. Yeshayahu knows every doubt and every sadness we might have or we do have, and has an answer for each of them. He repeats, you are glorious. You are more powerful than you realize. You reflect divine splendor more than anyone else on earth. Not this week's reading exactly. In the vision this week, Yeshayahu and Moshe trade places, and it's the later prophet who is more warning and stern. Sweet, but a bit sharp at the beginning. From here to the new year, we need Yeshayahu's consoling and encouragement that there is home even if we feel profoundly dislodged, that we deserve to make it back, and that we will, that no matter how broken the world is or we feel, there is hope and there is home. That's the gear of the prophet Yeshayahu. Propelling both the other gears of Moshe's words and Yeshayahu's is the Jewish calendar itself. Tisha B'Av this week is about destruction, and not only the historical destroying of the 2 temples in Jerusalem, but the metaphorical ones, when our people has not been whole, has torn itself apart, as in the desert, in the Torah, as in Roman times, or when our souls have not been at one within ourselves. And Yom Kippur at midday, we will recall the temple in its glory when the high priest would stand for a moment in the presence of the divine and speak the otherwise unutterable name. And then we will finish the New Year season by building Sukkot, huts, a literal construction project, undoing Tisha B'Av in our own yards with our own hands, rebuilding our people, rebuilding our souls, restoring our dreams to good repair. This year, we will, of course, struggle to feel that completion as we mark the first anniversary of October 7th, right as the holy days conclude. But the calendar and the holy days of this season, from Tisha B'Av through Sukkot, are supposed to be the final gear, a project management timeline for assessing the site of our lives and assembling the broken pieces and the other materials we need to rebuild home once again. There is an exquisite clock that we are winding up this Shabbat, so we can tell time from here into the new year. We need all its gears, the Torah with Moshe's voice and the prophet Yeshayahu, and the milestones along the Jewish calendar. It is a big clock, so it takes all of us to wind it, to put our energy into the spring so it will tick all the way through these next 11 weeks. Listen to the nuances of the gears each week in the specific words of the Torah readings and Haftarot and the days with special names. May the sharp and especially the sweet help us from destruction to rebuilding, from this year to the new year, from here to home. Shabbat Shalom.